Who's actually going to get the most out of a 55-inch professional-grade display? Who can safely walk away? And does the price make sense for someone who just needs a solid screen for everyday work? If you're still on the fence about whether this massive panel belongs in your office or studio, you're not alone. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started looking at ultra-large monitors, the biggest fear I had was ending up with a piece of equipment that looks impressive on the spec sheet but turns out to be a headache in a real-world environment. The NEC Sharp 55-inch wide color gamut ultra-high-definition display sits at the top end of the market, promising cinema-level resolution and a color palette that claims to cover most of the DCI-P3 and Adobe RGB gamuts. That sounds like a dream for anyone whose day revolves around color-critical tasks. Think graphic designers polishing a brand identity, video editors grading footage, or architects reviewing 3D renderings. The trade-off, of course, is the size and the price tag that comes with a professional-grade label. Let's start with the practical side of setting this thing up. The 55-inch screen isn't something you can just plop on a standard desk. In my research, most installers recommend mounting it on a wall or using a sturdy, adjustable stand that can handle the weight. For a typical open-plan office, you'd want to dedicate a wall space that's free from glare, because the panel's brightness is designed for controlled lighting conditions. If you're trying to squeeze this into a cramped cubicle, you'll quickly discover the viewing distance required, roughly 3 to 4 feet, for the full 4K detail to resolve without eye strain. That distance is comfortable for a conference room or a dedicated design studio, but it can feel overwhelming in a small home office. The biggest selling point is the wide color gamut. Professional users who have spent time calibrating monitors know how frustrating it is when a display can't reproduce the deep reds or subtle blues that a client expects. The NEC Sharp model comes pre-calibrated out of the box, and many reviewers note that it holds its color accuracy even after weeks of heavy use. In a real-world scenario, this means a photographer can edit RAW files on a 4K canvas without worrying that the final print will look washed out, and a video editor can trust that the shadows and highlights they push in DaVinci Resolve will look the same on broadcast monitors. For studios that need to meet industry standards, that consistency can save hours of rework. Another practical advantage is the connectivity suite. While the spec sheet isn't in front of us, this class of display typically offers multiple HDMI and DisplayPort inputs, plus at least one USB-C with DisplayPort Alt mode for newer laptops. That flexibility lets you hook up a desktop workstation, a laptop, and maybe even a streaming device simultaneously, switching sources with a remote or on-screen menu. For a team that rotates between devices throughout the day, that reduces the need for a separate HDMI switcher or extra cables cluttering the floor. Now, where does the display fall short? First, the sheer size can become a double-edged sword. If your workflow involves a lot of multitasking, say, pulling up spreadsheets, emails, and design tools side by side, the 55-inch real estate is a blessing. But if you're used to a dual-monitor setup where each screen is angled independently, you'll need to spend time adjusting the tilt and height to avoid neck strain. The panel's stand, while sturdy, offers limited tilt, so a wall mount with a tilt arm becomes almost mandatory for ergonomic comfort. That adds to the overall cost and installation effort. Second, the display's refresh rate is geared toward color fidelity rather than gaming performance. Most professional panels sit at 60 Hz, which is fine for video editing, CAD work, and movie watching, but if you're a competitive gamer who expects 144 Hz or higher, you'll feel the difference. The input lag is also optimized for static image accuracy, not the ultra-responsive feel needed for fast-paced shooters. So for a household where the main use case is gaming, this is probably not the best investment. Third, price sensitivity is a real factor. While I don't have the exact number in front of me, NEC's professional line isn't cheap, and that can be a barrier for freelancers or small businesses operating on tight budgets. If you're a casual user who mostly browses the web, streams Netflix, and does occasional spreadsheet work, you'll find more than enough value in a 27 or 32-inch 4K monitor that costs a fraction of this. The extra pixels and color range simply won't translate into noticeable productivity gains for those tasks. So, who should definitely consider?